Okay, and then we're also thinking of parking. So I don't know how much parking they have, but the smaller venues, we're looking at providing a shuttle service.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That was an interesting conversation. Okay, any other persons have questions to send on to the governor before we continue? Yes, Member Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. I did see that Member Rollins Fernandez had her hand up earlier,
okay.
so I don't want to interrupt her, but I do have a few questions.
Okay.
Mahalo, Member Hudgens. Mahalo, Chair.
Yeah.
It was just going to be a quick one. It was for it was for Chair.
Okay.
Did we release our resource people before I jumped in, or are we still going to need them?
I think we're still going to need them because we haven't even gotten to that place.
Okay,
what we're going to do is do all the questions that you want to send to the governor first, get that out of the way, and then go into talking about what we've heard our resource people say in terms of what we want to do next step going forward. And what we can do, seeing as how we have an agenda's items here. We don't have any actually state people here, but we have resources that we've invited. And so I think that if we could talk about the EP in terms of how we can use the EP to move maybe our Maui housing efforts forward. And that's where what we heard the testimonies come in today in terms of moving that forward. We could use the EP in that method to be able to move things forward. So that's my thoughts right now. So.
Okay, and then, so yeah. I'll go back to.
So our resources, I know, are still hanging in there. So, okay, so let's go on to questions. And yes, Member Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. So questions for the governors.
Okay, yeah, so we're going to go with Member Hudgens, and we'll come down the line like this, if you don't mind, and get those all out of the way so we can bring back our resources. Is that good?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Member Johnson. I do have like 10 questions, but I can speak fast.
Okay.
Okay, 1. What changes, if any, can we expect with the next iteration of the EP? 2, when is collective bargaining suspended relating to housing? 3, what are the circumstances in which the lead housing officer will be able to unilaterally approve projects? As I understand it, it's DHHL. For full clarity, I did have a meeting, but as the lead housing officer is changing, I would like to just have these in writing. And then 4, this is kind of what I'm talking about. What happens to the EP now, considering Ms. Medeiros and her resignation? I know that we have an interim director, but what then after? When this EP initially came out, it was anticipated to continue for a year with the re-signing every 60 days. Is that still what we are anticipating? Will this end in a year? And then continuing with that, when this expires, what changes, if any, should we expect on the state level that benefits housing so we no longer have to do EPs to fix our housing situation? 3 or 8, whatever number I'm on. Considering that this is a EP on housing and not specifically for new housing, what can we do better to help our renters? And then what can we do better to ensure that these homes are going to be going to local people first? What is the residency requirement that we're going to be utilizing in determining who gets to buy these homes? And then for Maui specifically, because, you know, we are going through a tragedy right now and suffering through a disaster, can we have language that includes, or rather excludes, the affected area so that the Lahaina residents know that we are not going to be using the EP to build without their participation? And then lastly, this kind of relates to the wildfire EP, but I would kind of like to see similar language in the housing EP. As I said, it is not just specific to new housing. In the wildfire EP, Member Sinansi and I were discussing this. I think it's on page 5, number 14, sections 127A, 30R HRS, as it relates to the rental sale of essential commodities during the state of an emergency and a prohibition against rent increases for the time being. I heard somebody say 18 months, but if that can be considered, we can roll it over into the housing EP specifically for Maui, considering the wildfire EP should be expiring in 60 days? Thank you.
Okay, those are great questions. So Steph, we got them all right? If not, you can just watch the video again. It's okay. Okay, Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure my colleagues are going to cover most of these questions, but my one principal question is on page 5, where it's the item A, Build Beyond Barriers Working Group. If we could request clarification of the structure, how much of it is state, how much of it is county participation, what the member makeup is going to be.
That's people's name on it.
Okay, I'll read it.
No.
I'll go ahead and read, but my main thing is letting the state know that the county wants to work hand in hand, and what, if any, participation they're going to allow us during this process.
Okay. Is that it, Member Cook? Okay, Member Ross?